In the culture wars, there are no winners, just podcasters. Only a few are willing to risk their lives in the face of some of the dumbest ideas to have ever captured human civilization. Every week, we, Meghan Daum and Sarah Hayter, humbly accept this mission to bring you conversations that are equal parts stunning, brave, and relaxed and refreshed after the holiday weekend. Welcome to A Special Place in Hell. Happy Labor Day, post-Labor Day weekend. I only celebrate emotional Labor Day myself. So I really had to do some self-care.
Where did Labor Day come from? Why do we have it? What's the whole deal?
To honor the worker.
Really? No.
What do you think it is?
I have never thought about it.
Did you think it was like child labor? You probably thought it was like childbirth. You solipsistic little wench.
I had never given a second to think about it until just right this moment.
That is very privileged of you. That is the epitome of being in a bubble. In an elitist bubble. Yeah, it's for the worker. But it's long weekend.
Why are there sales on Labor Day? Like, why did that happen? Because the worker doesn't have any money, and to honor the worker, capitalism is going to help them out by giving us great deals on home appliances.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Did you buy anything?
No, I didn't buy anything. I was away. I have been away for the last more than a week. I was in New York, and I flew back on Sunday, so I could mark Labor Day in the privacy of my own home. I've had it's been a very interesting week because I've not been following anything going on in the news. I was back in New York, and I had like a book deadline. So I have this book coming out next year, and it's an essay collection, and I feel weird talking about it because most of the essays, it's like stuff I've written over the last 5 or 6 years, and most of them were published, but like extremely paywalled in various places. So I wanted to kind of collect them in a book, but I ended up having to write a lot of new material. And it was one of those things where I thought I was going to be able to do what I needed to do in a few days. And it just became like completely overwhelming. And I was like getting up at 4 a.m. and writing, and then like passing out at 10 and then setting the alarm again, and barely left my apartment where I was staying.
It's like being a new mom. Like that's
right. Except
kind of labor, right? Like, I mean, you're deprived, but now you get to get rid of it.
You feel like an idiot, like you're going crazy.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Because it has nothing to do with the culture wars, I'm sorry to say. It's not topical. It's very conceptual.
Okay.
And but anyway, the book is called The Catastrophe Hour, and it will be out next spring. But the piece I was working on was very much inspired by some of our conversations, because it really had to do with why the personal essay feels very different to me than it used to, and why I have such a hard time writing personal material. And I think that some of your reactions to some of the stuff that we read says actually a lot about the state of the art.
Okay.
The personal essay. Yeah.
Well, I expect a big thank you, full page.
I thought you were going to say I expect
in the book
a percentage of the proceeds, of the massive proceeds.
I want validation.
Of course, but not giving you a cut.
Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of came up with this idea of like the end of the personal, like everything is personal, so nothing is personal. And I used to write these things, and it was like I was trying to get at an idea, and I was trying to use my own experience as a way of illuminating something. And it was very much about like what was not included. And I think that like when you talk about how when we read some of these pieces, like, I don't know, the Emily Gould piece or the piece a couple weeks ago about the guy in the New York Times who had moments of regret of having a child. And like to you, it seems like a slightly elevated form of Kardashians or something. And I think that's so interesting. And it speaks to, I think, something that's happening, which is that everything is in your face all the time. So people
When
can't even
did
really hear the difference.
when did the personal essay become like a medium? Like around
Well,
when?
I mean, going back to like Montaigne, I mean, it's been hundreds of
Really?
years. It's been, I
And
mean,
would you
if you
say
can
that
say,
it was a genre in the same, like when did it become, you know, fully like a form?
um, I mean, it depends. I mean, it's been around. I mean, like, depends on, I guess, what you call a personal essay, but an essay that uses one's own lens to talk about ideas. I mean, Orwell did that, and Swift did that. I mean, this has been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
E.B. White did it more recently. And then, we had this explosion in the, very, very recently, we had an explosion around 2014, 2015. Well, actually, no, it predates that. I mean, when the internet came around, so like every girl was writing
Right,
like very
blogging
confessional.
kind of,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
right. Exo Jane was the
Mm-hmm.
site everybody made fun of, like extremely confessional, revealing, shocking, transgressive, and that was just embarrassing and like a complete bastardization of the form, as far as I was concerned. But no, in the 70s, we had the new journalists doing that kind of thing, or Joan Didion, or, I was about to say Hunter S. Biden, Hunter S. Thompson.
Well, now
But,
when I think Hunter, that's the Hunter I'm thinking of, is Hunter Biden.
oh my
It's
God.
sad, but yeah.
Not the heart is a lonely hunter. Yeah. So I think that I have, even though this is a collection of personal essays, effectively, this book, I have no interest in writing these things anymore. I mean, there is new material that is personal, and I have very mixed feelings about it. But
so what will you do? Like, how will you write? Like, what are you gonna explore in other?
Yeah, I would just rather write fiction, I think.
I think you would be good at that.
Yeah, I mean, I have already a novel that I published. I think I don't know why I published that novel, and then I just never went back to writing fiction. But there is something, I feel like there's nothing. Well, it'll be interesting to see how this book is received. It's like a very kind of bespoke, like esoteric little book. I don't think it's going to be like, featured in New York Magazine or anything. Because essays are
You don't know.
it's kind of artsy and weird.
So it could be there, sure. Or maybe New York Magazine needs more. Well,
they always need more.
They need something more shocking, maybe. But we are going to discuss what both of the essays that we're going to discuss today are in the New Yorker.
The New Yorker. Yeah, I was saying New York Magazine.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they're in the New Yorker. Yeah. What's the difference?
So maybe you'll get published in the New Yorker.
I used to get published in the New Yorker.
Okay,
I don't know.
I can come back.
Yeah. So the piece that you brought in for discussion, it's very germane to this, because this idea, can AI replace art,
yes.
particularly writing? Yes. And I was encouraged by the verdict here.
Yeah. Well, I thought of you when I encountered it. So this is a piece that was published on the 31st, August 31st, by Ted Chiang. But if you look him up, there's an I in there. CHI.
Is that Xiang?
I've heard him on some interviews, and like the hosts said Chang, but maybe they were wrong. I don't know. And he just was okay with it. I'm just gonna say Chang.
Okay.
Somebody will correct me. That'll be terrible. And the essay is called "Why AI Isn't Going to Make Art." And this is in the New Yorker, and it's a kind of a lengthy essay, and it's interesting. And I was thinking about you as I was reading it. Ted Chiang is I like him a lot. I was actually introduced to him just a few years ago by somebody who, like, a commentator on my Substack. They were just like, I think you would really enjoy this writer. Mm-hmm. And they were right. I do enjoy him. He's very interesting. He's sci-fi, or what he calls speculative fiction, or some people call speculative fiction, but it's sci-fi. It's really interesting, and it explores a lot of like different realities. One of his stories was, I think it was a short story, was turned into the movie Arrival. Did you see that?
Oh, okay.
It was a few years back.
Okay, I'm not familiar with him, I gotta admit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. Actually, there's a piece of his that I wanted to maybe talk about on this podcast, where he writes about this reality where you can choose to turn off the part of your brain that sees beauty. And so some people choose to do that in their, young children or whatever. And he sort of discusses this like new reality and what.
Oh my God.
Like, it's very interesting. And he's a cool guy. He started off, I think, as like a computer science person, and then at some point switched over to writing. So it's interesting. He's an interesting guy. So he wrote this very long, interesting essay in the New Yorker. How did you feel about it? I mean, I can summarize his argument, except it's not.
Yeah, it's funny. I wouldn't call this an essay. That's so funny. I just
what
think
would you call it?
I just think it's sort of like a reported
an argument.
Well, yeah, it's like kind of a reported. So maybe it's a reported essay, but it's I would say it's an article. It's a reported article.
It's an argument. You're right. It's an argument.
But I don't think he is arguing it like, he's not saying I'm the expert here and this is what I'm telling you. He's saying this is what the evidence shows, correct? Or how much of his own?
No. He's just making a case. He's making a case for it, and it's not so much. It's not him as an expert necessarily. He's just making an interesting. I think it is fairly called an argument or a case for something.
Okay, I would,
but maybe not an essay.
Okay. I mean,
so why isn't it an essay? What makes it not an essay?
Well,
I think you're right.
An essay to me is like an essay to me would be sort of more abstract and like slightly more narrative. This is, I mean, look, it's all very loose.
Not a narrative, you're right.
But this is kind of a dry piece. I just
no, I agree with you that it's not an essay, but I don't know. I don't know. I just said that because
I know. Whatever. I would say
now that I think about it. No, I agree with you. I agree with you, but I don't know why I agree with you. I think you're right that it's not. It does appeal to me. I like this kind of writing. I don't mind it. But you're right that there's something missing there. There's a beauty to it. His work in general, I would say that if that's a very important thing to you, like the beauty of the prose, he can write pretty well, and his prose can be beautiful, but it's not what you specifically, Meghan,
informative. I would read this to learn something and to be informed,
or to think about something.
Yeah,
he's writing fiction, right? So he's creating this like alternative universe in which such and such thing happens, and he just sort of plays it out. I like him for the concepts that he's like sort of carrying forward more than the words he's specifically choosing, but I agree with you that it matters. And he would actually say that the words matter and the prose matters and the beauty of it
that's
matters. What
he's saying. So, okay. Yeah. So summarize his argument here.
So he feels like AI cannot really create art, or AI as we are currently used to it, this kind of generative ChatGPT, chatbot / AI generator, art generators. They can't make what he considers to be art. He thinks art is the result of making a lot of choices, and that is something that a human artist does. And he also thinks that it involves a kind of effort in creation that this kind of generation simply can't. It doesn't involve, and it's actually created in order to ease the process.
Yeah.
And he said that actually destroys it. Did I summarize it correctly, do you think? Or
yeah, but what is the reason that the machines are not capable of it? Because this is the thing. I keep thinking, well, yeah, they can't do it yet, but who's to say it won't get there?
Well, he says partially because they don't even. Art is a way of communicating. Language is a way of communicating. They can't even communicate because they don't have a message. They don't even have meaning. I mean, that's
right,
one of his.
And he doesn't think, he's not like a doomer saying like the machines are gonna like they're gonna learn some kind of meaning or ideology, and then they're gonna take over.
That's a big question. Are they right? The question is, it is true that they can do, and it is true that they can speak, but does that language have the same kind of meaning? So he says, I'm going to read like directly from it. So it's very easy to get ChatGPT to emit a series of words such as, I am happy to see you. There are many things we don't understand about how large language models work, but one thing we can be sure of is that ChatGPT is not happy to see you. A dog can communicate that it is happy to see you, so can a pre-linguistic child, even though both lack the capability to use words. ChatGPT feels nothing and desires nothing, and this lack of intention is why ChatGPT is not actually using language. What makes the words "I'm happy to see you" a linguistic utterance is not that the sequence of text tokens that make up of it are well formed. What makes it a linguistic utterance is the intention to communicate something. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think that's very true. My question would be how much readers really care. I think you're always going to have a contingent of readers who can tell the difference and who can care. But I think increasingly they don't. I mean, I look at stuff on Substack written by ostensible writers, and it's utter word salad. I mean, makes zero sense. Artificial intelligence would have done a better job. And people don't seem to care. I don't think they can hear it anymore.
But at least that is still by a person. So it's lacking in the kind of skill that you would call good art.
But it doesn't even make sense. It's not a good art. It's not organizing its logic effectively.
But it's still a language. They're still trying to communicate. They're failing at it because they suck. But that does, from Ted's perspective, maybe that would still make it. It's still a language because it's still an attempt to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. But what about something like, I can see that, and also how are you defining art? Because I can see this applying to whatever we call literature. I know this is controversial and subjective, but what about something like a romance novel, like just the most basic, unsophisticated, formulaic romance novel? Could AI conceivably write that better than a person? Like,
yeah, I don't know. It's so bizarre to think about stories as something, just the idea of a story or even a concept to be something that can originate from something other than a human mind. I've never even thought about that before. And it's actually difficult for me to conceptualize in my own mind, message without a messenger, a message without like a person, without a
right.
mouth.
But if it learns,
is it a message?
Yeah. I had John Vervaeke and Sean Coyne on my other podcast last year, and they've written a series of short books about this, mentoring the machines. This whole idea, like, how do you not only teach the AI the language model, but how do you teach it well? How do you mentor it into some kind of moral framework?
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard. So there was
it can find patterns and it can recreate patterns. It can do that,
right?
And if that's sufficient, then if all we need for art to be art, for it to be something that is understood by enough humans as art, like for them to feel a certain way when they see it, then maybe AI can create art, and maybe AI can speak, because whether or not it intends for a message to be received, it is being received.
Yeah.
Right? Like to it might be gobbledygook and nothing. It's just throwing it out there to get you to feel a certain way.
Yes.
And, or as a response to a prompt.
Right. In spite of itself.
In spite of itself, it can create art, because we are still deriving meaning from this, non-message.
Yeah. So, somebody was explaining this to me who had done some reporting around this, and his scenario was like that he seemed to think, based on this was a journalist who had done a long magazine piece about this that I now can't remember the name of, but take a writer's room on a TV show. So say there's 10 people in that writer's room, that AI could conceivably be programmed so that we know who each of these writers are. We know their identity, their age, their education level, where they went to college, what kind of family they grew up in, their whole backstory, what kinds of experiences they've had, what kinds of relationships they've had, what has informed their thinking. Like the AI could be, programmed for this entire group of people and conceivably spit out the same stories that this actual writing group, this actual writer's room could come up with for, a season, an arc of a show over a season, say. I mean, it's crazy to imagine.
So if it does that, let's say if it does that, an AI recreates you. It knows you so well, it can recreate you. It can recreate that book of essays that you just put together, right? But in my view, then weirdly, in its simulation of you, it is creating art.
Yeah.
But why? Why do I feel that way? As opposed to if it randomly generates something, based on a large, it's looking at a large data set of 1,000 writers. It's putting together all the kinds of patterns.
Because somebody is programming it. This is why. Because we're still at the point where our thinking about this requires imagining somebody programming it and saying, write like Meghan, write like these 10 people in this writer's room.
Right.
So, but once we obviate that, I don't know where we are. I still think we're very far from this. So there was a piece in the New York Times back on August 20th by Curtis Sittenfeld, the novelist and the short story writer, where she agreed to a literary experiment with the New York Times opinion section, asking what's the difference between a story written by a human and a story written by AI. So I'm just going to read a little bit. We decided to hold a contest between ChatGPT and me, she writes, to see who could write or, quote, write a better beach read. Okay, so they asked readers to vote on themes they wanted in their ideal beach read. This would be a novel. She said, we included some options that are staples of my fiction, Curtis says, including privilege, self-consciousness, and ambivalence. ChatGPT and I would then work using the top vote getters. So the themes that the readers wanted included lust, regret, and kissing. I don't know if these are themes, details, whatever. They want scenes involving these things. They wanted beach reads about naps and redemption, tattoos gone wrong, puppies and sharks and secrets and white linen caftans, margaritas and roller coasters and mosquitoes, yearning and bonfires and women serious about their vocations. Okay, so this information was plugged into ChatGPT, which wrote a story, and then Curtis wrote a story. And so the way they presented in this article is, they give us both stories and we're supposed to guess which is which. Now, it was completely obvious to me which was which, because the AI was totally clunky and filled with cliches and had no rhythm or lyricism or music to the prose. But that's 2024. 5 years from now, who knows?
Yeah. Well, it is going to get better. It is going to learn. I mean, but does that matter? Is art if we derive value from it, if enough of us perceive it as meaningful and we find meaning in it, whether or not the meaning was intended, is that sufficient?
I don't know. I mean, this is a very deep existential question. Okay, but let's think about music for a second. The music that is being put out now, like the most sort of commercial, whatever. I don't even know how we measure this.
Might as well be AI. I don't know.
AI would be better. AI would be better. It is so terrible.
Yeah.
And it is put together by committees of people who barely even know how to use the computer systems that generate this music. So Rick Beato, who's a YouTuber who talks about music a lot, who's is just incredible ear and sort of almost savant-like understanding of musical craft. He had a video fairly recently where he actually argues that AI coming to take over pop music is going to be good because it's going to be an improvement over what is being made now. Now, I keep asking, like, how has what is being made now been allowed to get so bad? Because you really just don't see it in any other genre. Like, I know I don't even mean to sound like old person shaking fist at clouds. Like, it is truly terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because it became electronic first.
Yeah.
And it can convert into an electronic form before text could without somebody, you can have a musical sound without a player. And you could have that a long time ago, actually, where it was like convincingly a piano note, but there was no piano. And we were able to achieve that, a while back, although many people would say, no, I actually can tell the difference. But
even you can do some artistry with that.
I mean, but that's what a CD is. That's what it's taking a sound that exists in a specific form into a digital form. It's always converting.
That's not what a CD. Wait a second. I mean, you're making a recording and you're pressing it onto a CD. Yeah, but that's not this. I don't think that's the right analogy. I mean, you can use fake instruments. Sound, that's different.
Let's say if you take a sound of a piano and then you convert it into some kind of electronic form where it is compressed so much that it sounds fake. It sounds like very, very one-dimensional. I don't know.
Well, that's what they did with auto-tune. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, or like, like video game music, like, dun, 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 like not a real, it doesn't sound like a physical instrument that people would play. I mean, hasn't it already shifted just from in that one instance of recording it, even at that first level where you think the fidelity is pretty good, it's still not the same. Right, as hearing a cello in real life versus hearing it now in a CD form.
Well, but I still think you're talking about two separate things. Like you can do a recording in a traditional way with real instruments, and you can capture it on vinyl, you can capture it on tape, you can capture it on CD, a digital format. That's a different thing than saying we're going to have like totally synthesized instrument sounds.
Well, but I think you're just taking one step, further along. I think
I understand the intellectual argument you're making, but I don't think it's correct.
Photography. So imagine it with photography. So you start off with, okay, we have reality as is, and now we enter this realm of photography and we're trying to capture, but what you never have is a scene as it is. You always have something different. And then you have digital art, which can really alter the scene itself. And then you take one step, in that direction, and you keep taking those steps until you get to purely digital art, that only references the real world and puts it together in random form. I mean, have we been walking down this path for a very long time? Are we making an arbitrary distinction at the AI level? I'm just I don't actually believe this. My intuition says no, something has changed, but I wonder whether that intuition is true.
I don't know enough about the visual arts to answer that question, actually. I mean, I hate AI generated visual art, at least when I can identify it as such. There's probably stuff I have no idea, but I mean, there's a lot of people still making real music, for instance, like a lot, and we just they're not like in the mainstream, not on top 40, whatever it is. I don't even know what the metric is anymore. Top 40. Does anybody care about that? The charts, their stuff is still charted, how often it gets played, how often it's downloaded, whatever. I just think it's another testament to how siloed everything is. I mean, there's huge worlds of, musicians, and they have big followings, and they have YouTube channels, and they're content creators, and they're touring, but they're not famous at all. But they have loyal followings, and they're eking it out that way.
I think it's just there are two different things that we're talking about. One is like the skill of a craft and whether that matters at all. Whether like the fact that you didn't even, let's say you just have the idea for a story and it's a wonderful idea, but you don't have the skill as a writer to write it. And Ted Chiang kind of poses a similar.
This has
kind of
happened. Yes, exactly.
Well, he talks about he mentions it. But what if, let's say, I have this idea for a wonderful story, I don't have the writing skills to execute it, and then I put it into a advanced version of ChatGPT, and I'm able to work with it. I'm able to tweak it to get it to sound like what I've been thinking in my head, and to feel like what I have, the kind of feeling I want to evoke. Did I not write anything? Or
I think you collabed. That's a collab.
Okay.
I don't know, but again, I just don't know what the harm. Well, I don't know what the damage is necessarily, because I think a lot of people aren't going to care. And I think like this example is a good example, because if you want to say something, it's important for you to say this thing. It's a valuable message. And if a machine can come in and help you articulate it better so that people can receive it, what's wrong with that?
Right. I don't know. Something feels wrong. But then again, I mean, it's like we've been using these little crutches for a long time, and now this is just like this is a big crutch.
I mean,
but we've been using spell check,
right? But exactly, and word processing. I mean, it was such a huge deal when word processors came, and like, oh, you can move paragraphs around physically.
Yeah,
like, oh my God, you cheated. How? What?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago,
and it felt like cheating, actually. And I always thought autocorrect, when I knew that you could do this, it felt to me like a kind of cheating. Like suddenly when I write essays, it doesn't matter whether or not I know how to spell. So long as I can get close enough that my word processor recognizes it as a word, that's sufficient. So there was, in that instance, like, here's one skill that I used to need to have in order to be a writer, which I didn't need anymore. And maybe we've just been like hacking away at those like actual skills necessary, and now it's muscle. Pure imagination.
Absolutely. Well, it's sort of like I mean, this is a very prosaic example, but I think it's relevant. Like maps, like using GPS all the time. I don't think people have any sense of like the layout of their cities where they live.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they know which is east, which is west. I don't think that, like, people under a certain age, I don't think that they could like imagine in their mind the layout of where they live.
Mm-hmm. You don't need to.
No. I mean, and oh my God, I heard the funniest story the other day. So, there's like self-driving, there's Waymos now, there's like self-driving Ubers.
That's terrifying.
Well, no, because they're only on the west side of Los Angeles where I do not live. But somebody I've heard that they're great. But somebody was telling me that she had witnessed a Waymo getting totally confused, like not knowing what to do, like to make a turn, whatever. And where was this occurring? Wait for it. Coming out of a Trader Joe's parking lot.
Oh my God.
If the one thing that they will not be able to teach the self-driving car how to do is navigate and negotiate a Trader Joe's parking lot, because nobody can. Nobody can.
Yep. Well, okay. So here's another way to think about it. We have like mass produced, like there's so much that technology has enabled us to have that used to be, like things kings could have, like the kind of glassware, for example. I'm just staring at a glass in front of me, but the amount of glassware I have in my house, and interesting glasses, I like them, and there was a period in my life where I like to make cocktails, and so I have different kinds of glasses for that, but I can afford it. They're mass produced, so I can get them. And lots of people can explore their own kind of artistry enabled by this kind of mass production technology. You don't need to know how to literally blow glass, right? At the same time, like you can still buy hand blown glass, like glassware. And I know people who have like sets that were like made for them, and usually it's because it's made for them by somebody they knew,
blown
like a
for
friend
them.
of mine. Yeah, like a friend of mine who's or the son of my like good friend went into like glass blowing.
Became
He
a glass
made
blower.
me, yeah.
Your friend's son. When your friend's son is going into glass blowing, you need to be extra nice to your friend.
Look, it reveals something about like the kinds of people I spend time with, whose children think that this is a good thing to go into. But they cherish that kind of unique, like the very uniqueness of that set. They cherish it in a way that they wouldn't with anything else they own in their home. So there's something to be said about, yes, now glass blowing has gone out of style because you don't really need to on a day-to-day basis, but it's not to say that it has disappeared, and it's not to say that its value, if you can take it on, has disappeared. If anything, it's more valuable, given that it's done by hand. So maybe that will remain for writers, you know, and you can say that I know how to write, and I know how to put together a sentence all by myself.
But I just think people don't. I think people can't hear the difference anymore. That's what worries me, is there's kind of a way of like sort of going through the motions of something that is good, that there's a kind of splashy way of writing and like throwing a bunch of stuff, and people and so you can kind of give the impression that this is really deep, but when it makes no sense at all. And there are a number of people who will fall for that. I mean, I have seen people in comments saying things like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever read. And I'm like, this thing makes no sense. Like, you have been.
But these are real. These are not AI examples.
No, these are real people. But it's like you have been like bamboozled by this writer, because this doesn't make any sense. I mean, there's some readers who will say, like, this happens with students a lot. You know, they go, well, I kind of liked it that it was hard to understand. Like, I kind of liked that it was unclear. It really shouldn't be unclear. It can be as complicated as you want.
So
but
you're
it
just
should
talking
not be
about
unclear.
You're talking about a quality that, like, you're talking about humans failing the human quality test.
Yeah, I think that, but I do think that like AI.
You think AI would fail it more, or
I think no. I think AI. Well, no. I mean, I think I think AI would not do the word salad. AI would be a lot clearer, but it wouldn't have like the kind of like soul, and the imperfections of a real piece. I mean, a real piece of art, produced by humans, is going to have some imperfection.
Oh, that's what I think distinguishes it. Like,
right.
To go back to the stupid glass blowing example, like a perfect piece of glass versus something that's blown by hand the imperfections are enormous.
Yes.
and like a hand blown.
I mean, you don't want too many imperfections, but
well, I mean,
you want a little
compared to something you buy. I mean, it's crazy how many imperfections,
right? But that's part of
charming.
That's the texture of it. But again, like, it does come down to this. I mean, I was writing about this in my essay. Like, it's about making choices. Every creative endeavor has to do with what you choose really not to include. It's not what you choose to include, because for every choice you make, there are infinite numbers of choices that you didn't make. You decided not to do this by saying I'm going to say this. I'm going to write this sentence. I'm going to produce this chord, this chord change, whatever. I'm opting out of all these other sentences and chords. So, an AI is going to make those choices based on what worked before, or, whatever algorithm.
Right.
I don't know.
That's what Ted Chiang talks about as well. Yeah. He also says that that aspect of choice making, that kind of choice making, it's not even a choice at all. Like, it's really just taking large amounts of data that has worked before and turning it into some kind of average, and right. coming up with, here's the thing that is most guaranteed to appeal to a broad audience. Maybe it'll be very, very good at coming up with massive things that appeal to like a Marvel movie, maybe.
Well, yeah, those are. I mean, those are practically AI generated. I mean,
right.
Even the scripts, I would say.
They're done by committee, which is kind of the same thing, right? Like, I mean, that's what the committees, they're looking to find something they know will work, because they really want a big hit on their hands. They're spending so much money. They don't really take true risks, because true risks entail failure, and that a Marvel movie is not going to totally flop. because that's what they're intending it to succeed. They're intending
but
it to
people are
be
satisfied with this, though.
right.
So,
Right.
so what I'm saying.
So has Marvel killed like true cinema, or
Yes,
is there still
it
a
has.
space for true cinema?
I think it
somewhere?
has.
Okay.
I think that people really only go to the movies for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there are real movies playing. I've heard that there are actually, like, some people still release independent films and such, but nobody's motivated to go to the theater. Why would you? Why would you end up paying $30 to sit there with people talking and, in a
I mean,
theater?
maybe it just needs to become cheaper for the average person. So like the Substack equivalent of movie making, you know what I mean? Like it used to be expensive to be able to run your own newsletter. Most people couldn't do it, and then email came along and suddenly it was possible, and then things like Substack happened that make it even easier to process payments, and now you can have independent little shops that are producing, and maybe not the best quality all around, but enough that there's interest, and there's a difference in what you will find here than what you would find in a magazine. And could that happen?
Well, it's already happening. I mean, as much people can make a movie with their iPhone. I mean, the technology is very,
it's still
accessible. I mean,
people
I can't do it, but there are people who can.
Actors aren't cheap. That's a problem. So it's not.
Oh, I
it's
see.
Not that,
yes,
it's not,
like a fiction
film.
Yes,
right. You still need a physical set.
I was thinking about What Is a Woman. Sorry, there's films that are not done by.
Right.
Sorry,
right.
Okay.
You can definitely create something on a budget that you could not have created, but you still need a budget in a way that you don't really need when it comes to music making. Really, you don't need a physical instrument if you want to be a musician. And there are like pure electronic artists out there who are good. I mean, top 4, everything on the radio is crap, everything. But outside of that, like there's some smaller artists you can find on Spotify, and they're doing some interesting stuff, and they don't own anything. Like they have a computer, and they can do some interesting stuff. That happens. That exists. So I don't know. The AI conversation is a little different though, because there's no speaker. Again, there's no message. There's not even, I mean, eventually we will get to a point where there's not even a person who has a message to convey. And what does it become at that point? Pretty
I don't
interesting.
know. Yeah. Well, hopefully I'll be dead by the time it gets better.
Why would you say that?
It gets better than me.
Maybe it'll be an exciting new world. Maybe, maybe what you do will be prized more than ever.
Yeah,
everybody's losing the ability to write and put together a sentence.
Right. I'll be a glass blower.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll
be like Yo-Yo Ma now. It's like he's one of the 5 people left who can actually play cello anymore. But so that's great.
I don't know about that. Okay.
No, there's a few.
Jealous.
If it wasn't for like high school orchestras, I really feel like music would go away faster. Like the ability to play physical instruments would go away faster if there wasn't such a thing as a high school band and high school orchestra.
Maybe classical music. People are always going to like play guitar and stuff.
I mean, I don't know, because I don't know if that's pop music anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's young people are listening to that. They're listening to a lot of like hyper pop. I don't know. Super pop. I don't know.
So bad.
But they're listening to stuff that can be generated on a computer.
It's so I was I mean, we'll move on in a second, but like when you hear music like a singer, do you notice if they're out of tune or anything like that?
Yeah,
like, you do.
Yeah.
I mean, because I was
I've good tone. Yeah, I've
like that Adele that I can't remember what was it like? There was a big Adele single, "Take Me As I Am" or whatever. She's out of tune in moments in that, and they don't auto tune it, and it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything would be, and that has a real, it has a kind of feeling of I'm agnostic on Adele, but like I would rather listen to her than like Taylor Swift. But I was listening back for some reason. I had some like Fiona Apple on my iTunes or something, and I was listening to that album, like Title or something. It was from the mid 90s, probably early 90s. She is so out of tune. So out of tune.
Yeah.
And it's a very like meticulously produced record and everything. And I'm like, wow, did they not have auto-tune back then? Or they did, or they didn't? Like, did they try? Like, it's not on purpose. It's very distracting. And I don't remember being bothered by it back when it came out, when I listened to it when it first came out. And I wonder if that's because there was just more out of tuneness. Anyway, people can.
I think it was
I'm sure
just, yeah,
people will school
just,
me on this.
I think you're right, but that's like the perfect glass. You know, you're used to a perfect glass, and you want it to be perfect, and you also want it to be unbreakable, and like strong, and all these things. You know, like
it's a little bit like, come on, just be a little more in tune.
I can't produce. I can recognize, like when something is out of tune. But sometimes I like a little bit of it.
A little bit, but yeah, I'm a little autistic in this way. But yeah. All right. Anyway, so what else do we have to talk about?
We have a piece that you found, also in the New Yorker.
Yeah. Yay, New Yorker.
Yeah.
It was a piece about going no contact with your family. And this is something that has become very sort of mainstreamed in the last 4 or 5 years. I've noticed family estrangement has become an extension of self-care. And it's kind of disturbing. And this piece I thought did a good job of showing how this can happen.
Yeah.
For kind of possibly no good reason.
Yeah. And it covers a teenager. Is this Amy?
Amy. Yeah.
Anyway, did we even say who the writer is? Anna Russell.
Yeah.
Writes this piece. It's called Why So Many People Are Going No Contact with Their Parents. Are these titles? I feel like sometimes like there is a title and then it changes. Do they do that now?
Yeah, well,
like these pieces, like
well, the web version title is probably different than the actual magazine title.
Okay.
The actual magazine titles might be like a little more like just literary and artistic, but the web title has to be SEO.
I find that they often change it. You know, like by the time we're discussing it, and then by the time we're recording, it's like a different title.
Well, sometimes I think they change it because it gets people
more views.
Go crazy.
Way, yeah.
I feel like they might have changed the title on that. I regret having my child piece that we discussed.
Yeah, because so many people are burning
tweaked it a little bit.
I think they do it on purpose. Like they do it. They put something inflammatory out there to just get people talking, and then they might change it, sort of do a little switcheroo if it's getting too much heat.
Right.
But they want the heat, and sometimes they will create something more inflammatory. They'll
troll you.
Yeah.
And then they're like, nope, nothing to see here. We changed it.
Yeah,
we just wanted to gaslighty.
Yeah, we just wanted to scare you with this clickbaity title. I would feel very insulted by that if I was like a writer who had to.
Oh, look, writers never come up with the titles ever, and so people get so angry about something that's in the headline, and it's like, well, nope, that's not what the piece is. It's really frustrating. Anyway, okay, so it focuses on this young woman named Amy who she's from Canada, Alberta. She grew up in a very very Christian, like Bible thumping kind of family. Her parents thought she was going to hell, et cetera, if she didn't do certain things. And then she ended up going to, was it a Christian college actually? Yeah. A pretty conservative college.
And she went to find a husband.
See, she's doing everything right. She listened to your advice. She probably is a fan of yours.
No, doubt it. Not anymore. Follow her. Let's follow her, and then we'll see.
She wanted to be a trad wife.
Well, and then things changed.
Yeah, she got, her professors. She became a bit of a social justice advocate.
Right. So this young woman is changing, and she, it sort of follows her at first leaving the family home and still maintaining a lot of the same beliefs as her parents. And then as she continues to grow up, and, goes to law school and everything, she starts, her views start shifting. I don't know if, does she ever say that she's like left Christianity? I don't know if she outright says.
Well, the guy she married is Jewish,
right?
For what it's worth,
right? Right. So she finds a guy, marries him. Her parents are unhappy about her transition into this like new
and
life.
they won't come to her. There's all this stuff. They won't come to her wedding. It's during COVID. They won't get vaccinated and all this stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, right?
Right. So so there's kind of a mutual separation going on. And this is all like this is the background to a discussion that the writer is having about family estrangement and the growth of this as a phenomena among Americans. And there's like experts who talk about, well, why shouldn't you? People understand a toxic, unhealthy relationships, like when it comes to romantic relationships or even friendships, and why shouldn't this be a standard that we also apply to family? But the writer is very good in that she complicates the picture quite a bit throughout the piece. What did you think of Amy?
I mean, I imposed a lot of assumptions upon her. Like, I just kind of saw her trajectory. I mean, she's defining herself in opposition to her family. So she goes to college. She's obviously a very bright person. But I think she goes to college, then she go to law school. She becomes involved in like kind of abolish the police kind of activism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's getting really upset with her family over COVID stuff.
Right. So when the couple tries to get married at her husband Peter, is synagogue. The synagogue requires vaccination.
Right.
And so that's part of the drama of like, well, they don't want, she sends an email to her family saying that you have to get vaccinated, and this causes a big upset. She ends up, taking away the bridesmaid honor from her sister. They fight on the phone. They don't speak ever since then. So there's a lot of like I think there's small steps that lead to a total family estrangement.
And we should say at one point when she was in college, the parents wrote a letter to the college saying that they were worried about sort of her ideological transformation.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Really weird.
Yeah.
Like, that is really weird. And then later the mother apologized for it and wishes she hadn't done it and wants to talk about it with Amy, but she's not having it. Look, I mean, this is a case where we have like people who are true believers.
Right.
In various ways.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what Amy does. Like, this is how it plays out with her parents in regards to her wedding. Amy suggested her parents could throw their own celebration. Amy's mother asked if the synagogue's leader would let them come through a separate entrance and keep their distance from other guests. So these parents do not want to get vaccinated. I beg of you, quote, I beg of you, do not respond to this imperfect email with anger, she pleaded. Please see the love behind it. In the last few years, I have felt such reserve from you whenever we are in the same room. I have come to believe that you would prefer not to have me in your life at all. Is it true? Or is that true? Amy responded with a short email of her own. This is the only response I have for you about vaccinations and our wedding, she wrote. There were two choices, get vaccinated and attend, or don't. I can't help you deal with those feelings about this choice or make it for you, she wrote curtly. Please do not keep trying to discuss this further with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of, that made me uncomfortable. The whole tone that she was taking.
I can imagine that like she has her own universe of people that for whom this is like a normal way of dealing with your toxic family.
Yeah.
This is just part of the vocabulary of like self-care and setting your boundaries.
This is what you have to do or else. Your choices come or don't come, be a part of my life or don't. And I think that puts the parents in a horrible position that there's no kind of accommodations for these parents. Like they ask for the separate entrance. They're okay with like sitting to the corner, I guess, by themselves. But this was not sufficient. Or you just say, let's have it outside. My parents are really like,
yeah, I don't know.
they're really nuts about this. And I want to protect my friends who are also nuts about this. So let's host much of it outside. I feel like you can accommodate this request.
You can, but I mean, I know people who have had similar meltdowns. I mean, during COVID, around this stuff, I mean, families just imploded. Right. People still aren't speaking.
Right. So Amy's parents did not attend the wedding, nor did most of her siblings. But they had a nice time. They had a nice wedding, and then they try out this low contact relationship with the family, and it continues to get worse throughout the essay. Yeah.
I mean, so and then the piece goes in and talks about all these no contact support communities, and this is a whole kind of subculture. And I definitely know several people who have gone no contact with their families, and it's none of my business why, although I'm always I have questions about it. I mean, do you think that a lot of this just has to do with, I'd love to see the age breakdown here. Like at what age does this start to be more common? Like, are these people who have grown up so accustomed to their parents just kind of serving them and validating them at all times, so that when there's something where that can't happen, they just like lose their minds? Like,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, so she was religious, so she came from a different background, supposedly. But I think she just fell into a completely different worldview, with
now she's
people who think
about something else.
Yeah, who think of family in a very different way and what you owe them in a very different way. And I mean, estrangement is a very complicated topic. And I think that Amy was maybe she was a great, like, exemplar of what is going on now. She is not a good example of like an estrangement story where you really feel complicated feelings about it, because I don't really feel a ton of complicated feelings about Amy. I just kind of feel like she's a brat and needs to settle down a little bit and to meet her parents where they are, accommodate them a little bit as they are willing to, accommodate her a little bit. And she's not doing that. So I have very different feelings about it. But I, spent a long time working in a field where people had very extreme ideological differences with their parents that really could not be accommodated in a sane way, and then that led to estrangement from family and especially from parents, and it was deeply painful. I mean, it's not something you can really take lightly. And so what's strange to me is the lightness with which she's taking this, and maybe it's because she's young and doesn't fully understand what it is that she's doing. Maybe she's a young woman who's just recently married and doesn't really, just recently building her family and hasn't really put herself in the shoes of like a parent, and the writer herself is a parent, and she speaks to this in in a paragraph towards the end about, now that she's a mother, she thinks about, oh no, what could I be accidentally doing? What could I do in the future?
She hasn't really needed them. I mean, other than like showing up at the wedding. And just to be clear, she runs a law practice in Calgary targeting police and prison misconduct. That's not necessarily abolish the police. So correction there.
Right. But it's, it's the kind of,
I get her. I know. I get her type. That's
yeah,
what I'm saying. Right. I just, to be fair. Yeah. And then at the end of the piece, it talks about how, she's bought a house with her husband and they've got a chicken coop, and they talk about wanting to start a family.
Well, she'll learn. That's the point at which you learn. Suddenly you begin to need other people again. And then you realize that you were wrong to treat them disposably,
well, I know people who won't let their parents around their kids. I mean, doesn't necessarily override that. Like, even more so. I know people whose parents have never met their kids.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So my experience has been working with people for whom it really was an ideological difference that separated them. It wasn't really like toxic behavior, or, like toxic narcissism or whatever it is. It was just purely, I think the way that you're living will send you straight to hell, and I don't want to see you in hell, and I don't want your viewpoints to be infecting your siblings and send them to, then they'll go to hell too. Everyone's going to go to hell thanks to you. And so I want to contain it, and that's why I do this painful thing of not talking to you, or you're bringing shame upon me. That's going to reflect badly on your, sister's chances of getting married or whatever. So I've encountered in a very different context in which there was that ideological fissure that was huge, but a desire by both sides for this to not be the thing that's happening, and really wanting the other person in their lives, albeit with major differences in how they behave and choose to live. But I found, I would tell people, especially if they would say something like, okay, my parents are really unhappy with me leaving the religion and living away from them, and now I want to get married, and, here's my boyfriend or my girlfriend or whatever, and they won't come to the wedding, they won't, they're protesting all of it. That happened a lot with a lot of people. And I found myself saying to them, because I had seen it happen, was just, you know what, go through with the wedding, do it on your own terms, try not to feel guilty about it, and keep whatever amount of contact you're happy with your parents. Don't cut off that line entirely, because once you have a kid, grandma will feel differently. She's mad at you and she might not come to your wedding, but she's going to want to see the grandbaby, regardless of how unhappy the whole encounter was. I mean, and that's of course, this doesn't happen sometimes, but I just found that it happened so frequently that I could often sort of tease it, and it would play out. Something about grandchildren tends to soften the whole thing.
Yeah. But in Amy's case, her mother does very much want to have contact with her. And she's like, writing return to sender on her letters. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say what will happen. I mean, what do you think of people who say, though, like, well, my parents have such warped views, I don't want them around my child, I'm protecting my own child, and really, like, I'm going to define my family in such a way that, again, is in opposition to how I grew up, and therefore they can't be around. It's like your children become an extension of your ego that has been built on the premise that you're not like your family. I mean, it
is so, I just think it's so unforgiving and uncharitable and uncompassionate. And I think those people, a lot of them will learn that lesson when their kids do grow up and start to rebel against them. And maybe they will feel differently about how they're treating their parents. Having said that, of course, toxic parents exist. And I know people who also, not just toxic, but straight up abusive. I know people who've cut contact with their deeply abusive family, and for their own good, and they're better off for it. But I don't know if most families necessarily fit in those terms, and whether we're walking down too far down this, my therapist says my mom is a narcissist. My therapist has shown me that the way that my parents relate to me is deeply toxic, and how they raised me was deeply toxic. And now I see this, and now I hate them, kind of, I can't help but find a lot of just sort of nefarious meddling,
well, this is how therapists stay in business, because they want to affirm, they want to tell you what you want to hear, so you keep going to them.
Yeah. And it makes you feel good about yourself, but also puts you in a position where you're cutting off some of the very same family and support networks that would enable you to leave therapy, I guess. You know what I mean? To not need it in the first place.
And I just feel like people don't, this is such a cliche, but people don't understand boundaries. Like, you don't have to be around your family all the time. You can just say, I'm going to see you this many times a month or a year, or have a boundary. People, it's either all or nothing. I feel like people are
exactly as
totally enmeshed, no boundaries, calling their mother million times a day, FaceTiming their family, walking down the street, talking about nothing. I see this. It's sort of like that or no contact. I mean, I'm being hyperbolic here. Obviously, most people are somewhere in the middle, but I've just get a life. Like, you don't just check in once a week, go through the motions, and then have your life. You don't need to like be completely entangled with everybody all the time. People can't be alone. I think that's the other thing. They just can't tolerate it.
People can't tolerate being with people who are not like them in exactly the way that makes them comfortable. I mean, it's just, that's what it feels like it is to me. Like, I'm not going to accommodate my parents and their desires for how they want. I mean, for me, I have to do this. Like, I have to set very strong boundaries, but I have to think a lot about what is it that's really important to me. What is a boundary that I really, that if I say this or else, I'm okay with the, or else I'm okay with my, like, losing my mom or my dad. And, there's actually not a lot of things that make it to that level, it turns out. When I really like think about it in that way, if she decided to, truly take the other option, where would it leave me? Would I be happier there? Not a lot of things, not a lot of things. And so this does mean that for me, personally speaking, I go to my parents' house, I live as if I'm religious. I'm wearing what they want me to wear.
Wait, what's that?
But just, I couldn't, like, I'm not going to go out into the community, like, with like a pair of shorts on, because that's not what they want.
Do you wear a headscarf?
No.
Do you wear full burqa?
But if I went to a like mosque or like a religious themed event, I would cover my head, because that's what but I wouldn't go, and they wouldn't invite me. So that's where we have our own little dance, where they're not going to invite me to a place where I would have to really negate everything that I believe in, and put on a big show. But, when I go to their home, when I attend like family gatherings, I'm dressing in like a modest way. I'm not talking about the ex-Muslim stuff. I'm not talking about religion at all. I never bring it up. I pretend as if I don't drink, like I pretend as if I've never
about
dated.
This podcast?
Yeah, they know, and I don't know if my mom listens. Maybe she does. She actually, like,
how can she
turns
not
out she was watching everything. Like, she's always like one day she commented on some jacket I was wearing at some event, and I was like, "How did you even? I didn't even tell you."
Don't be so sure.
Like, yeah,
my ex-mother-in-law listens to my podcast, apparently.
Okay, well, no, she might be listening. Actually, my mom, of all people, might be listening. But she commented on like some jacket I was wearing. She was like, "I like the fit on you," and I was like, "What?" And she like Googles me.
So they're watching
on YouTube.
The YouTube. Oh my God. Yeah.
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 So, I accommodate. And I think it's not to say that I think I do the perfect thing. I know so many people, like, because I mostly hang around with people who are not religious or have left religion, whether that be Islam or Christianity or whatever. And often people from like kind of fundamentalist backgrounds, like intensely religious. And they have everybody has different boundaries, different places that they're comfortable with. And I think so long as you're having that discussion, it's one thing. What struck me about Amy is this all or nothing attitude, this sense of like almost dominance, that she was like, I am right. I know that I'm right.
Yeah.
And so it is your duty to.
I mean, she sounds captured. I'm sorry. It's very familiar.
What would you do if this was your kid?
I don't know. I mean, I would just, I can't even imagine. This is something that I would not even presume to comment on. I mean, I see friends of mine who bend over backwards to go along with the bizarre beliefs of their kids because they don't want to lose them. I mean, the gender stuff, I see it all the time. Like, yay, my daughter's, getting a mastectomy. My child, they are getting a mastectomy. Facebook friends, yay. And I'm like, horrifying. Oh man.
That's horrifying.
And I know why they're doing it.
Yeah.
I don't think I would do that, but
I always thought it was great that my parents were, I mean, in a way, in a way it was it was a sign of their love for me that they never that they had difficulty with coming to terms with me leaving the faith. You know, like they don't want me to burn in hell forever. That's what it meant. It meant they were fighting that, and they were fearful for me.
Yeah. It's
and
a protective instinct.
Right. So, and I always interpreted it that way, you know? And so what I don't understand is how like people just like walk, like Amy was religious. So she knows the perspective her parents are coming from. Is it too much to ask that she put on that hat for 2 seconds and try and think about it from their perspective? I guess so.
No, it's hard. It's hard to go through the motions. I mean, it's like, you know, you're in a situation where it's like, just be polite and go through the motions. But sometimes it's just really, you can't force yourself to say something that you don't believe. And then I'm like, why am I getting hung up on this? Like, but yeah.
I've started to practice saying, I don't agree with you, but I don't want to talk about it. Like, I don't think we should move on. You know, I don't agree with this, or this is not something I ascribe to, but let's move on. And like trying to be casual about it. You know,
they don't
like,
see that
look,
as
I
like
don't believe in all this.
Aggressive.
I think it depends on how you say it. Like if you truly believe that it doesn't matter to my relationship with this person, then you should hope that your words you should try to convey that, you know, like, look, I don't really agree, or I think this is bogus, but whatever, let's move on. Like, I see where you're coming from. Move on.
Yeah. I was at a gathering last night, party, and started talking to this young woman's person, who, she seemed non-binary to me. I don't know, but started talking about how she did like mental health stuff with trans people. Like, we were having a totally nice conversation, and she was like a truly lovely person, like funny, very warm. Like, I was really enjoying our conversation. And then it becomes, you know, she's like, oh, I work with trans people. And I was like, I need to get out of this conversation, because the next question is going to be, what do you do?
Yep.
What is your podcast about? What are that? And
that's, I was dangerous. Like,
I have to get out of this conversation right now.
Yeah.
Because I am enjoying this person, and I'm enjoying this party, and I don't want to ruin it. And I don't want to just sit there and sputter and lie. And so I just like started talking to somebody else. It's terrible.
I know. And I have been in so many like kind of mildly professional-ish events, like networky type events, where on the one hand, at some point it will come up, like what I did do, or, you know, do like, but at the same time, I don't want to lead with it. Like, I want to be like, I'm a good person. Look at what a good person I am. And I'm empathetic. And I care about human rights. And oh yeah, I, you know, founded an organization. You know, like,
but that's throat clearing. That's everything.
It is.
Make fun of. Like, I hate Trump. I hate Trump. I hate Trump. Okay.
But you know, I mean, I've seen it so often where somebody will just introduce me, and they will introduce me, and I'll be like, listen, don't say anything about the activism. Like, say something else. Say anything else. Say the podcast. You know, like, say, community organizer, whatever. Like, use a term that's not that word, ex-Muslim, because the second they hear it, there'll be some people who are very interested in talking to me, and sometimes they're great. Sometimes they're sufficient. You know, I just have a great time talking to those people. And a lot of times it's like, oh, thank God, like, fine, it's like somebody who sees this, and I'm so glad, like, somebody talked about it. Blah, blah, blah.
I know. Yes, that
right?
does happen. Right.
It does.
You never know. And
you never know.
It could, right. So it's a shame to.
It's a shame to hide it.
Yeah.
At the same time, there are probably relationships that you can build with people who don't agree, who would be really put off by that term alone, you know. And if they can feel warmly towards you as a person, that will allow you need an emotional clearance, okay, for them to contend with like the idea you're throwing out there without immediately rejecting it as a hateful. It's a tough thing. It's often something that's out of my hands, because people will introduce you. Oh, this is Sarah Hayter, and she does blah 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 blah. Like a bunch of like
no.
Sometimes it's great, right? Sometimes it's great, but sometimes it's just awkward and awful. And then I know this person is never gonna, like, they don't even want to consider anything that I'm saying now that they've heard that. So awkward. Oh well.
No, I went up to look at some potential retreat venues, and I get to this place, and it's like a wellness, this retreat center. And I get there, it was really beautiful, and the woman is gonna, young woman, like, kind of, looks whatever. She works there. Manages the place, so she gives me a tour. But I get there, and that immediately she says, "I just want you to know that I looked you up," and I'm like, "Oh no, no, no." And I really appreciate what you're doing. I am so grateful.
Wow,
I
great.
can't speak, I feel like I can't talk often. Like, I can't, I'm so grateful for you for taking on these issues. And I was like, oh my God. So
that's amazing.
We're going there.
That happens too. That happens too, right? Like, it
does.
The thing is, you don't know where somebody's about to land.
No
idea. You don't know.
Right.
And then they can go anywhere. It can just be, I recognize what you're doing or know what you're doing and I hate it. I often find that those people will just like there will be times where I'm just, living kind of everyday life, and there'll be somebody who either recognizes me or like looks me up and then knows and is unhappy about it. And they often just won't bring it up, but they'll like won't look you in the eye and that kind of thing, or they'll just seem cross and unfriendly, and you don't know what you've done to them. And it will turn out that that's what you've done, and they don't support it, and they're very unhappy about it. So there's not a lot of confrontation. One time I had somebody confront me, and it was like at like a bank.
A bank?
Yeah. And
working at the bank?
Yes. And yeah, he was like, "So, I see here, ex-Muslims."
Oh, it was the name of your organization.
Yeah,
he didn't recognize you. Like,
no,
that's
because he had
impressive.
paperwork for me, and so he saw from the paperwork, which he was reading, and he was a Muslim, and he wanted to have a whole conversation, and we did.
Well,
and I didn't want to be there.
The bank would approve of that.
I know, but he wasn't rude about it. He was just curious.
Maybe it was a cry for help.
No, he was a believer, and he was just upset about this, the reality of this thing. And it was, I felt captive. Like, I couldn't leave, like I have to do the thing that I came here to do. And here's this guy wanting to talk about theology with me, and he knows my social security number.
God damn, that's so hard being us. Can't go anywhere without people wanting to talk about theology. Gender.
Yeah. Gender is like, oh my God. I feel like I've had so lots of times where I'll just be like, look, I don't even, and you can tell from the look they give you when you go on that topic, or they know you from that topic. Either they're like really seeking to, like, making eye contact and like, please, like, you get it. I know. We're both crazy.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Or they're just like, why do you have to do it? Why do you have to? Yeah.
I feel like they ignore me when they dislike what I have to say. They'll pretend they're unperson me. It's like I'm not there. I'll be right there, literally right there, sitting next to them, somebody that they were friendly with 2 years ago, and now I don't exist. I feel like that's what's happened with the gender stuff, which is very feminine, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, all right.
Okay, we've been going on.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we've been going on.
Okay. As you can see, we did not discuss anything happening in politics. We did not discuss.
That was to give people a break. Right?
Yeah, we're doing you a favor. This is for you people.
I mean, you didn't even watch the interview.
I didn't. I was too busy writing.
Yeah.
And Kamala was interviewed by Dana Bash. There were a lot of commercials. I can tell you that.
You know that.
And
I think maybe the fever is breaking a little bit. Maybe a little bit.
I think Kamala's one of those people that if she had a Substack and she just like spewed out her word salads, people would be like, this is amazing. This prose is so amazing. Like, I don't really understand it, but I can tell like this is a very deep person.
I thought it was very strange that she had Tim Waltz next to her. Very strange. You didn't find it bizarre?
I didn't watch it. I watched some segment.
Look, this is her first real interview. You know, like real actual interview, not, you know, some actress kissing her ass on a talk show, like a real interview. And she had a commentary podcast. They called him her emotional support animal, which I thought was great.
Is he what is he, a puppy? Like what kind of animal is he? Would be like a dog or
he's a little
rabbit?
He's a white man, and you can hire those now. Like you can just
Is he like allowed on the plane? Is she gonna bring him like
he has to
the way that she can bring
fold
him
over into a little crate? Yeah,
he wouldn't be allowed normally. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I was more excited about the whole thing.
It's just I've just accepted. I'm on like the whatever fifth,
resigned.
Sixth, resigned. I'm in, you know.
The stages of grief. You're past well, everything, the bargaining.
Like, what's going to happen is going to happen, and I'm not going to argue with it. I'm not going to argue with fate. So,
nope.
On that
All
note,
right. Well, thanks everybody. Please, you know, whatever.
Rate and review, please. Like, can you leave a nice review? Can that happen? Something nice. People do, but then people don't, and that's the problem. But you can change.
Have a boundary. I don't care. They can. It's not my business. So, all right. See you next time.
Bye.
You have reached the end of the episode, which probably means you like our content. Why don't you join our Substack right now? You can become a paying subscriber at aspecialplace.substack.com. You can join our listener community, leave comments, interact with everybody. We'll see you in there. It is totally worth it. So please join us, aspecialplace.substack.com. And thanks for listening.